断点までの水平距離は単純度20で乗算することでおそらく12メートル前後、手元の計測による 0.3 秒くらいで着弾しますから、水平方向のことで変わり、おそらく時速144キロメートルあると思われます。とんでもないことが判明してしまいました。
手を伸ばしたとこに偶然この人が。
Welcome. Ziggy1X here again, and I'm recording these two back to back. I'm going to release them separately, but drinking from the chalice of my fallen foes. We'll just say they're the shrunken skulls of my fallen foes. And let's talk about our last two characters here. This is going to be Divine Theo and NieR's Griff. Now, these two fall into their own category. First of all, for the obvious reasons, because they're both wind, but also because they're that special treat that the developers give us when we only have to pull one copy of a costume to fully realize the costume's potential, and thank you for that. My goodness, thank you. I wish it was the case with NieR's Serapha and Udil, but it isn't. Those guys, you really need 4 copies of each to unlock their potential. But moving along, let's not bury the lead. Let's talk about these two costumes, what makes them tick, what makes them really special in my opinion. And I'm just going to start out here with Divine Theo. She's not on the NieR banner, she's on the current banner, but all of the Divine costumes from what I've seen so far, she's my third. I missed the first two, and they are all really good. I underestimated how good they were until I got Divine Yuri. I stuck her in my party and went, wow, this really is a nice bump in my power. So since then I've been convinced to getting them. One of these days maybe I'll get the first two. But anywho, what do we got here? Well, first of all, she has the highest attack in the game, which is odd for a supporting character. But let's look at her character skill. 350% 4 times, up 120% when on affinity is wind. She's doing a lot of damage in that character skill, and I mean a lot of damage. She's damage capping. It's 4 times, so it's not the full 5, but it's a lot of damage. Now, increases damage dealt by critical hits by 20% for 30 seconds for all allies, non-conditional. This is not attached to element. So that's a flat 20% increase in damage if they're critting, and then increases all allies' attack by 20% for 30 seconds when own affinity is wind, also non-conditional. Now, her own affinity has to be wind, but the other members of the team don't have to be. Now, granted, there's almost never a circumstance where that's going to be happening, where they're using different elements, but it's nice to see. It's broadly applicable to the whole team, and by the way, that also is going to be a running theme for both her and NieR's Griff. They have stepped away a little bit from the elemental exclusivity that we've seen in past elemental damage specialists, and they're now starting to benefit their whole teams regardless of element, which is great. Now, vigor 30%, very high. That is something that we weren't quite sure about in the beginning when we first saw it. We thought that may have been a mistake because usually it's 25% for the whole team. That would have been much better. So this is probably the one mark against her, that she's not benefiting the whole team's attack with a group vigor. And Tempest Onslaught, all enemies or all allies with the same affinity get damage up at 15%. So that means that if they're using wind weapons, they get 15% more damage on Pursuit, which is awesome. Pursuit's a really easy qualifier to meet, and it's very powerful. So that's what she's doing. She's bringing a whole lot of attack to the team. She's her own damage dealer. There's some demos that Lizzie has put up where she is outpacing Festive Theo in the wind element. And Festive Theo is one of the best, probably the best, most well-rounded damage dealer in the game. And she's outpacing Festive Theo in the wind element. So she's awesome for subjugation. I can't really say for arena and for regular content in the game. So arena, not really. Subjugation, awesome. By the way, actually in arena, a better pick than her is the Recollections of Dusk 063Y. He's better than she is in support for all of his passives that he gives the team for a rainbow team, for a team that isn't just exclusively wind. So that's a cool thing to see, is that we've got this now with 063Y and Griff from the Recollections of Dusk series. Those two costumes are amazing support costumes, and they're some of the best that we've got, and they're free. So be mindful of that. Anyways, let's talk a little bit about her. First of all, again, her weapon, good support weapon as a secondary, not a good primary weapon, I don't think. I think you're going to always be using her with either the Priet EX Fists or something else that can boost the wind damage of the entire team. She falls into mostly that wind niche, but she is flexible. So if you're, for example, if you got a newer account, you're looking for someone to you're trying to get a hold of these costumes that you can get away with only having one copy of and really gain the full effects from, she's a great candidate for that. So I think she's worth the pull. I think that we should prioritize the New Year's banner over her because it has Serapha in it, and that's the only reason. She alone is the best reason. The other two costumes on the banner are cracked as well, but Serapha is next level. So recommendation for Theo, yeah, I think you should get her if you have the means to, but that is only after you have gotten what you need to out of the New Year's banner. So moving on, let's talk a little bit about Griff, and we're going to do a little bit more talking about Griff here because Griff is we'll call him the third or fourth evolution of a series of wind damage dealers, which are all very powerful, and I only started collecting at the 2.5 anniversary. So first of all, we first got New Year's Yuri last year. So it's been a year. And if you compare these two, you can see the breakdown. Stats-wise, she's not carrying as many stats. She doesn't have as high attack. Her character skill is doing as much damage, but she's not doing something in particular which Griff does here. She's not benefiting the whole team with her character skill. She also has she also has lower Whirlwind Pursuit by 10%. She's got 50%, Griff has got 60%. So I'm taking these all kind of in stride just to compare them. Is Yuri a fabulous wind damage dealer? Oh yeah, she still is, big time. But let's go to Festive Gale. And also, by the way, Abyssal Mirror Saryu, who is also a very, very, very powerful wind damage dealer. Now you can see the stats are increased. You can see that the pursuit is the same, but you can also see she increases the damage of 2x chains or more by 15% for 30 seconds. This is much more impactful than the increased 15% attack from New Year's Yuri. So right there, even from her character skill, and by the way, she's doing this for all of her attacks. So if you were, for example, to lead into an attack with a character skill, you knew you could damage cap on it, and then you follow up with her two weapon skills, those have a much higher chance of damage capping or doing significantly more damage because of the buffs that she's giving herself from her character skill. So she was the next evolution of Wind. Now, Saryu kind of does something similar, where she is giving herself an attack of 15% for 30 seconds, which is similar to the New Year Yuri, but she's also increasing her own attack and stats from the weapons she's got significantly in her passives. The problem with Abyssal Mirror Saryu is that her pursuit, first of all, it's only 30%, and it's locked behind Awakening 3, which means you need 4 copies of her. This is why she stands apart, in my opinion, as the worst free-to-play friendly wind damage specialist, because you need so much of her to make it work. Now, all of this being said, all these costumes are great, by the way. Very powerful. Let's take this now to Griff, who is our current incarnation of a wind DPS, and you can see we have already 3 excellent wind DPSs on the roster. Why do we need another one? Well, let's talk about this. Damage up by 60% on the passives. That's awesome. That's Pursuit, and that's a next evolution, next step up of Pursuit. And again, these are multipliers, so 10% is not just adding 10% to the total, it's multiplying 60% instead of 50%, which does end up giving you a lot more at the end of the day. Increases the attack of Wind Affinity weapons by 100%, that's great. And also the training being on the third passive, the third Awakening, you don't need it. It's great, but you don't need it, it's fine. It's not game breaking though. And so that means that you can get 1 copy of this guy and be just fine. He's got good attack, not as high as Gale's, but that's also because he's not benefiting from the attack modifier in his passives. But let's talk about his character skill real quickly, and this is one of the things that really makes him shine. 330% times 5, which is the same as Yuri, I believe. Yep, 330% times 5 increases by 70%, so a little bit higher, when you're using a wind weapon. And then increases the damage of 2x chains or more by 2x chains. That's awesome. By 20% for all allies. So he is extra 20% to your whole team from this guy, okay? This guy is great. And it doesn't have to be wind to do that. It also increases all allies' wind damage dealt by 30%. Obviously, that's attached to wind. But he can add a massive pursuit bonus to your entire team without even using a wind weapon. He could do 330% times 5 without using a wind weapon. He doesn't benefit from his whirlwind pursuit, that's really where he's locked into it, because 60% is a substantial chunk of damage. But also worth noting is that the weapons of all of these newer costumes that we've been getting ever since the Christmas time, they all have the elemental boon, not 30%, but 35%. That is a good chunk. That is a good increase. And these are additive bonuses. So they're not multiplying, they're adding to each other. But a 35% additive bonus is very similar to a 30% multiplicative bonus if you're only stacking a few of them. So it's actually very good, and it's super reliable because the only condition that needs to be met is that you're using the correct element weapon. You don't have to meet a pursuit condition, a caged or bold vigor condition, or crit condition, or anything else. It's just always there. So it's a very useful thing to have. Now, review for these guys. Should you pull? Well, I think that you're probably going to get a hold of a copy of this guy while you're trying to get Serapha, unless you're super lucky. Should you chase him? Well, if you have Festive Gale, if you have a Awakening 3 Abyssal Mirror Serapha, then probably you don't have to chase this guy. He's very good. He is more powerful than they are, but he's a bump up. He's not a leap ahead. And so if you have those two, you're probably just fine, which is nice. But if you do end up getting him, you only need one copy. The Divine Theo, should you get her? Absolutely, if you can. Should you chase her if you're low on resources and if you're trying to squirrel away for Anniversary, which is going to be in February, as well as probably part 2 of the Tracers banner, which is where we got our alternate 2B and alternate World Ender, then you may want to squirrel up your resources. But these Divine costumes, every single one of them has been very good, and they're very hard to get a hold of. We've only had one rerun of Divine 063Y, and no reruns of any of the newer ones. So they are hard to get a hold of. The best time to get them is on their own banner. So that's going to be my review of these costumes, and boy, are these all bangers. And thank goodness our next batch that we're getting isn't going to be as impactful. It gives us a little bit of time to set aside and squirrel. And we do have a monthly reset before the anniversary. And the anniversary usually overlaps between February and March, which means that we're going to also have 2 resets, technically, while the banner is active, which is going to be good. We also have the next chapter of the story coming out soon, which means we're going to get the gems from that. And we're going to get a couple other goodies that come from there, from Variation and all these other types of events. So we have a month and a fair bit of opportunity to save up and squirrel away our gems for the anniversary, which will probably be very good, and what comes immediately afterward, which is usually pretty darn good as well. And then we wait for summer. That was a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it here. I hope your pulls were great. I hope everybody had a wonderful Christmas and New Year's, and looking forward to 2024. It's going to be an awesome year. Peace out, y'all. Have a good one. Bye.